Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CFO Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would love to introduce our speaker, Kyle Trainer, Senior Pre-Sales Engineer at Wolters Kluwer. We're excited to have Kyle with us for a thought leadership titled Digitizing FP&A in 2025, Planning Automation and AI-Powered Outcomes. Welcome, Kyle, and over to you.
Thanks for the introduction and having me here today, Brittany. I'm excited to talk about, what I frame as the digitalization journey within FP&A, and specifically talking about artificial intelligence and how the Office of Finance can really begin to embrace the power of AI within their organizations. I think we've all been hearing about AI for quite some time now. It's a conversation that I'm continuously having with my customers, both old and new. Whether that's machine learning or large language models or generative AI or natural language processing. There's a lot going on in this AI space, and it's been a lot for organizations to take in and to really even begin to understand, how do I start? How do I really apply artificial intelligence into my processes today? And I think with all of that said, there can be a little bit of, let's call it uncertainty, maybe even a negative connotation around AI. But I mean, matter of fact is the Office of Finance in particular can really benefit from having an AI assistant in their planning process. So I'm excited to dive into some of those details today, and really where we can find, practical applications for AI in the FP&A space. I wanted to kick off with this diagram here that I've just really spun up. It's funny when I talk to my network and I ask them how they interact with their FP&A teams, whether they work directly or indirectly with them. Oftentimes the answers I get depict some back office analyst who's crunching a bunch of numbers. They're building reports. They're the ones at month end. They're sending out those emails. Please submit your data here. Please make sure this process is all said and done. And when we come back to this diagram, I think this depiction, it's unfortunately a reality for some of our colleagues in FP&A, where there's a lot of time spent on data, on validating data, cleansing data, transforming data, where we're working across multiple personnel who are spread across different departments. They're probably using their own systems. So it's a lot to consolidate all of this data together to even really get to the important parts, the true elements of FP&A, which is to be that strategic guide for the business, to evaluate risk, mitigate risk, look at current and future initiatives in the business. But there's oftentimes all of this upfront data wrangling that has to occur first. And this is really one of those areas where artificial intelligence can really step in and assist the teams. And really, in order to harness this, the power and the automation of AI, you could probably see the theme here, but we need data, and we need a lot of it. And all of this data really needs to be in one single place to have artificial intelligence really work to your benefit. And if you take a look at the stat here on the screen, I mean, it is kind of eye-opening, but it's really true that raw data in your business, it's nothing but white noise if you're not evaluating that data, if you're not putting that data to good use. Sometimes I've worked with customers, Kyle, I want to put weather data into all of my plans and it's going to make everything better, and that's just not the case. I think of data as we can think of data as crude oil coming from the ground, right? There's so much potential. There's so many different applications for crude oil, but it has to be refined through specific processes. It has to be put to those specific use cases. And you can think of data in the same way. So we can't just throw data into a system and immediately expect to see results. That's really just not the case here. We need to make sure that you don't fall into this, garbage in, garbage out scenario. I'm sure we've all heard that phrase. And it's going to take some time to understand your data, to evaluate your data, and to even have a system do the same, to have a system learn and train against those different data sets. So when I think about artificial intelligence, especially within, the CCH Tagetik platform, from a practicality point of view, I see AI applied in two main categories, and that's data management, which I talked at length on already, and then intelligent analytics and reporting. So just touching a little bit more on the data management side, when we're looking at multiple source systems, we're looking at different applications, we need to consolidate this data together, not only leveraging just native ETL capabilities in a platform, but also leveraging AI to help you on that data end. One of those areas is auto mapping. So as we're working with multiple ERP systems or multiple source systems, being able to use natural language processing to map that data into your system so you don't have to tediously go through each and every row. Or when we look at more transactional data sets and doing a layer of anomaly detection, where, as a user in FP&A, I don't have to go sift through and find all of the different exceptions or outliers in data and figure out what might have gone wrong. I can allow artificial intelligence to bring that to me. So that's another area on the data side that we'll actually be looking at live today. And now that we have clean, we have quality data, we can really begin to embrace the predictive planning capabilities that artificial intelligence can really level up our plans with. Analyzing outcomes in a more effective way using driver-based analysis. This is a very common use case that I'm talking with a lot of my customers on. They want to use other data sets to help bolster their plans. These data sets might be, internal to their business. They might be external data, macroeconomic data, whatever the case is, but we're allowing artificial intelligence to find the correlations, to detect key business drivers by bringing in all of these large sets of data and letting the system do that heavy lifting for us. And then as we look a little bit further into more of the analytics and the reporting, right? I'm sure we've all been in those meetings where your boss comes in and asks you for a specific report, you have to get back to him. When we talk about generative AI, when we're talking about those different capabilities that AI can bring on the reporting side, it really bolsters those ad hoc reporting capabilities, and that can be visually as well as narratively. And this is really, where the rubber meets the road. I think, the AI driven decision making and automation, it's tilting the scales. It's allowing our finance professionals to really spend more time on, again, providing that strategic focus, to really have data driven decisions at their fingertips rather than having to wrangle through all of these data and build all of these reports month over month, quarter over quarter. So, today I'm excited to kind of walk through some of these areas in a live session here. Let me actually go ahead and get my session up here. Let's talk through some of these elements of artificial intelligence and really the practical applications here. So right from my homepage, what I'm going to do is jump into my planning process. And what I've done is I'm actually going to leverage our native workflow capabilities here to just help us depict some of these different areas. Let's start with our auto mapping. So again, we can load in data. Let's just say we're loading in our ERP account data. We can let our artificial intelligence help us with that auto mapping. And then as an assistant, they're really detecting all of the different areas where we might want to take a look at. And this is actually showing us all of the auto mapping that's done at this GL level. You can see all of my account codes that have been loaded in from my ERP systems. I can see the account descriptions that have been loaded in as well. And then here in my third column, I can see the accounts that CCH Tagetik has actually mapped in for us. Now, this looks pretty simplistic, but this is really the beauty of AI is all of the processing that's happening on the back end here. So Tagetik's not reading through the account codes here. We're leveraging natural language processing. We're reading through these account descriptions, and Tagetik is intelligently telling us what account it should be mapped into. And it's actually giving us a list of the most likely case of what account it should be mapped into, the least likely account. So if I need to actually overwrite what our natural language processing has recommended to the end user, I can go ahead and make that update in just a couple clicks here. And then as I make those updates, the system learns from that, right? That machine learning is embedded into the platform. So we can continue to have these additional GLs come in, and then we can read through those specific updates that users have been making. So this is just one of those benefits of bringing data in and allowing the system to really do that heavy lifting for us and map that GL data. And again, this can be done at any different level of transactional data within an organization. I'm not going to make any saves to those changes here. Let's jump back out to our workflow here. And what we're going to do is jump right over into our anomaly detection, which was in our data management bucket. Right, so we're loading in our actuals. Let's say we've rolled over into a new month. We've loaded in our actuals, and we can actually have our anomaly detection run through and find anomalies for us. We can configure and have specific confidence thresholds that we might want to pinpoint. Those might change based off of the specific data sets, the specific channels or products that we're looking at. And then just as I mentioned earlier, we can allow our artificial intelligence to bring to the end user really what they need to be focusing on, what matters most in terms of outliers. So I can see here in my validation cockpit that Tagetic is actually pinpointing an outlier here. It's happened in our USA entity, our professional hardware product line, and our retail business here. And we're just looking at our overall volume, or we could just think of units of actuals. Tagetic's actually identified it's a 58.5% to be an outlier here. And if I need to, I can get an extra level of detail to really understand and analyze this data at a more granular level. So now I can come in and I can say, okay, well, you've identified this as an outlier, but is it an outlier? And I can come in and I can see what the actual plan was through the past months. I can see this data point that's come in. And through this visualization where we're looking at exogenous variables or external variables, we can see that this is already a probability of being an outlier. And if I scroll over to the right here, you'll notice some of these variables that we've already embedded into the plan. So you can see that this discount percentage has a heavy representation of, well, why this is actually going to be an outlier here. And from a visualization perspective, I could come in and I can analyze and I can say, okay, well, based off of the base case, without any of my drivers embedded into my plan, this actually looks to be okay. It's within that confidence range where we would anticipate our actuals to come in. But as we're embedding in all of our other drivers within the business, whether those are discounts, marketing campaigns, we've increased sales staff, things of that nature, we're additionally embedding those elements into the plan so we can really have a deeper understanding of, well, we were actually anticipating this actual to be a little bit higher due to some of the other elements that are going on within the organization. And as an end user, again, I could come in, I can accept this as an outlier. I could say, I don't think this is an outlier, and the system would read against that. It would take in that actual, it would rerun through the plan based off of that update that the user has made. So these are just two different areas from that data management side to really help our users guiding in on the data, right? Whether we're looking at anomalies, looking at outliers, or even just trying to map in data where more often than not, we're dealing with a lot of different source systems, and it's a very tedious process to do that. Jumping right along here, let's jump into our driver-based analysis here. And this is really one of my favorite parts of when we're talking about artificial intelligence is really bringing all of this data together and really analyzing it and making use of it. Whether that's external data sources, maybe it's internal, like we have examples of quality index scores or customer satisfaction scores that are coming in. We'll, of course, want to check the data. Maybe we'll want to take some checkpoints as we're toggling through data sets, and then we're going to let our artificial intelligence do the heavy lifting for us. Let's come in and actually do a data check. Let's focus in on our hardware product line, and we're going to look at all channels within our USA business here. And what we're actually going to see is a little bit of just light correlation analysis, right? And this is definitely a big concept that I talk a lot about with my customers is, again, we can't just throw data at a system and expect better results. We really need to analyze our data. So we're allowing a solution, a platform solution to help us with that heavy lift. So here we're doing a volume analysis where we're able to compare our overall volume against these different data sets. And I can see how correlated these different data sets are against my overall volume or sales. As I scroll over here, I can see the overall revenue mix. So we're looking at all of that across all of our different channels. And then as I scroll down a little bit below, you'll see all of the different data sets that we've embedded in to our AI analysis. So we're looking at our volume against price and discounts, marketing campaigns, as well as some of those macroeconomics, inflation, unemployment rates, PPI. And from this visualization here, I can actually come in as an end user and analyze that as well. Let's say I want to compare my volume to our discount percentages, and I can see how correlated those are. Maybe I want to look at those against our inflation rates, and I can see that that's actually very negatively correlated here. So this is really a great area where we can come in and actually understand that this data set may or may not want to be used, right? When we were talking about raw data is just white noise. Well, this is one of those areas where we can actually begin to analyze that data at a little bit more of a granular level. And I can actually come in here and I can get a little bit more detailed when we're looking at our specific drivers here. So in this representation, in this graph here, we're actually looking at the past 6 years. We're looking at our actuals versus what our planned sales were. I can look at that in terms of our mean absolute percentage error, as we've looked at all of these key variables that we've embedded in. So again, as we saw from earlier from our anomaly detection, we saw that that discount percentage is a very heavy driver within the business. I see that variable represented here, as well as some global marketing campaigns that are done at a lag. That's represented at a lag too. So we don't see some of those represented until 2 months down the road. And of course, we can get even more granular when we're looking at some of these different drivers here. And I think this is a really great point when we're trying to bring in all of these different data sets and we're really trying to understand the business at a more granular level than a lot of organizations really have been able to in the past, right? Some of our drivers, they're going to change over time. They might not be representative in 1 year versus another year. And we're going to be able to see that in CCH Tagetik, that actual capability to review our overall drivers. So here we're looking at our impact analysis, starting in beginning of 2020, all the way in through the end of 2023. And if we look over at our legend here, we can see all of those different drivers that we've brought into the system. And we're looking at those against the actuals as well as the average. And I can see how positive or negatively contributed these factors are against the overall plan here. So I can come over and I can see that that discount percentage is actually a large contributor to the overall business here. I can come and hover over and see that the discount percentages in the latter months are actually at a lag one, negatively contributing. But one of the more important parts that I like to showcase in this report here is really this others bucket. So you can see here in our forest green bar here that there's actually some other data points that are negatively contributing to our plans we haven't identified yet. And we're really going to need to uncover exactly what those are. But that's the beauty of having a platform help you along the way, is that you can bring in these additional data sets. You can begin to analyze and find the correlations of those in just a couple clicks, and you're allowing the artificial intelligence to run through the different models to analyze your data for you. And then you can begin to understand those trends over time. Another example here, we can see that a global marketing campaign at a lag 2 looks like it did pretty well in those first few months of 2023. But as we look at some of those fall going into the winter months, we're not seeing that same contribution positively. So maybe there's something here from a seasonal perspective we would want to take a look at. So let me jump back out to my process here. Let's finally go into the predictive intelligence. So we've looked at all of our data. We've analyzed our data from a historical perspective. Now let's put it to good use into our plans. How do we forecast against this? So we can load in those additional data sets. We can create different baselines. So maybe I want specific plans that have embedded in just internal data. Maybe I want certain plans that have internal and external data. We can create and cater these different scenarios and model these out. And here, let's open this form. We'll be able to look at our overall revenue plan. We'll still focus in on that hardware product line here. And we'll actually be able to see how we can begin to plan and update while we're still leveraging all of the intelligence that AI is giving embedded on top into these plans. So we're looking at our net revenue here. We're looking at that plan through 2024. We're looking at the actuals. We have that confidence interval in place as well. So our high and low, as well as that overall baseline here. And as I scroll down, we're going to be able to see the global plans, regional and country plans, as well as some of those drivers that we've embedded into this plan as well. We have our marketing campaigns, our quality index scores. Whenever you see a yellow cell within CCH to get it, it means it's editable. So not only are we getting the intelligence from AI to bolster this plan here, but I can update it. I can now run specific simulations. Let's run through one. So let's say, let me scroll back over here. Let's look at unemployment. I'm going to come in and say, okay, well, I actually think through the latter part of the year, there might be a spike in unemployment. Go ahead and double that to 6%. I'll go ahead and drag that over. And as I make that update, you're going to see that's represented in my plan. My overall plan, it's decremented down a little bit, about 3% in comparison to the baseline. So maybe if we're trying to model that out, there might be a situation where I want to, let's say, maybe bolster up some of my marketing campaign. Here I have my marketing campaign. Maybe I want to try to increase some of that spend to balance out my overall plan. I'm going to use some of that spreading capability we have. I want to proportionally spread, let's say here in August, let's beef this up to, let's say, 300,000 here. Proportionally spread across our professional and small hardware lines. And as you guys saw earlier with that lag too here, so as we're updating that plan, we're going to see that represented in a lag as well. So here in just a couple clicks, we've embedded in artificial intelligence, but we're also able to update our plans here. We're also able to represent the different areas of spend, the different macroeconomic factors, so we can really try to evaluate risk, mitigate risk, and really enhance our overall plans using these different drivers and data sets that we brought into a system. Now, one last area I want to go into is really on the reporting side of the house. So let me jump over into my reports and analysis here. And this is going to show me some of my reports that I have here, but I really want to focus in on our dashboard. So I'm going to click into this dashboard here. And this is really where some of the really great innovation has happened in terms of generative AI, where we can have artificial intelligence help us build out some reports here. So I have a couple reports. Looks like I already have some sales by product family in here in my dashboard. Let's go ahead and add in a different report. Let's say I want to, let's say, break down my sale. Let's say show me my sales trend by month and business unit. What generative AI is doing, it's reading through all of our different data sets within CCH Tagetik. It's intelligently able to understand exactly where that data resides, and it's able to build out this report for us. So again, when we're in that monthly meeting, that quarterly meeting, your boss comes in and says, Kyle, I need to see this specific data set. Show me this by this product family. No problem. Let me go ahead and ask AI to build that for me. And what's great, of course, this can be interactive as well. So as I scroll down and see sales by product family or sales by my business unit, maybe I want to see that distribution by just our sofa product family. You can see that all of our charts are going to update and they're going to be representative of all of that specific data. So the generative AI front here is really, really enhancing some of the reporting capabilities that we have. And just right at your fingertips, any user can come in and see the exact data that they're trying to look for. Let me see if I can't find my PowerPoint here. Here we go. So moving right along here, I wanted to talk about some actionable steps for deploying AI. I think a lot of us have probably heard about the crawl, walk, run method. It's a very common approach for a lot of different situations. I think for artificial intelligence implementation into the business, it's a great, great way to think about it. From that crawl perspective, again, guys, the data is a very, very foundational and fundamental part of really getting a lot of great use of artificial intelligence. So what data sets should be coming into the planning process? Where does that data exist? Does that data need to be transformed in any way? And you actually might come to find that certain data sets that you thought were super valuable might not have as much importance as you actually think. And then actually doing some simple predictive forecasting, some simple time series forecasting forecasting techniques, just using historical data and nothing else. I find this is really helps customers get acquainted with the statistical techniques that artificial intelligence can really give an organization, really just with that level of a confidence interval and thresholds embedded in there. So now you really have a best case, worst case, and not just a point forecast. And once you get that data in a good spot, you've aligned it all, you're coming, a little bit more comfortable with the predictive modeling. Now we can start embedding in drivers. We can start building in these additional internal and external data sources. And now we can really start understanding, okay, well, what drivers are really important to the business? What areas do I really might want to focus on a little bit more? And then additionally with that, it's that outlier analysis. Because now that we're looking at these specific drivers, well, now I can say, okay, well, let's for an example, the global marketing campaign, I really want to understand if there's any outliers there, because that might be changing the trend right there in that month, and I need to be able to take action on that. And then as we're really walking and we start running and sprinting down the road with artificial intelligence, as we just saw, the generative AI tools, now that we have all of the data embedded into a single platform. And then last but not least is really extending this out, maybe across the FP&A realm, bringing in your other extended teams into the platform and releasing these AI models to these cross-functional teams. There's so much value that can be had within artificial intelligence, yes, in the FP&A realm, but this can really expand out to other departments and other divisions within your organization. And that's something that I think that everyone should really keep in mind. Last but not least, some key takeaways for getting started. First and foremost, it's a platform solution. When we think about artificial intelligence and the large language models, the machine learning, you really need to find a solution where you're transitioning away from siloed spreadsheets. Everything is within one central location. And even furthermore, finding a solution that can scale with your business. Again, think about the crawl, walk, run approach. You're going to want to take a little bit of a baby step here. And as you're bringing in more data sets, as you're bringing in other teams within the organization, you really want a solution that can support you along the way. That really leads me into this next bullet, which is, guys, we have to embrace the journey. Do not take the big bang approach. This will not happen overnight. This will take longer than a week. This will take longer than a month. So really focus and analyze on certain parts of the business. Where's the most bang for your buck? Start focusing on each line of your P&L. Really try to start dissecting, what are those areas that they're, having struggles with? And then you can start expanding out from there. And last but not least is define your goals and have executive buy-in with those goals. This is a very, very important part to engage your stakeholders, across the different departments to really identify these key areas. Have an executive who's really looking at, key results, key metrics of this is going to be very, very important. And again, defining your overall goals with AI is also super important. We saw a lot of different things today with, natural language processing and generative AI. But if at the end of the day, we're looking at return on investment with this. So having that executive buying and being able to track those metrics is also an extremely important part for getting started. And with all of that, Brittany, I'll say just a quick thank you from me. I'll hand it back over to you. It was a pleasure joining today.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kyle, for such an insightful session. As a reminder, audience members can still enter questions, and we'll go ahead and review a couple that came through. So Kyle, this first question asks, how can organizations foster a culture that embraces digital transformation within the finance function?
Yeah, it's a great question. Can you repeat it one more time for me, Brittany?
Yep, absolutely. How can organizations foster a culture that embraces digital transformation within the finance function?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. It leads me back to, some of those key takeaways of getting started. You really need to have buy-in from everyone. There needs to be, key metrics, key use cases that need to be met, and you guys need to be, and organizations need to be striving for that. I think it's very easy to get, lost in all of the details, especially when we think about, an implementation of a new platform as well as artificial intelligence on top. So you really just need to embrace that journey, set your expectations of really where AI is going to help out, and embrace the journey.
Perfect. Thank you. It looks like we have time to squeeze in one last question. How can finance teams identify the most critical areas for AI integration within their FP&A functions?
Ooh, that's another really good question. Two key areas that come to mind. So I know I talked about, focus on each line of the P&L, but additionally, start thinking about data intensive tasks. I know I've said data probably 100 times here, but it's really a key area that artificial intelligence can assist a lot of our FP&A users. So, the financial forecasting, the risk assessments, things like that, things where there's a lot of data, I would take a look at those. And I would also look at, repetitive tasks, maybe even things that are sort of time consuming, which is, the data entry, the reconciliation, the report generation things. Anything that you find yourself doing month over month, time and time again, I would say more often than not, artificial intelligence can probably help you along the way. So those would be those two key areas: data intensive tasks, and then repetitive and time consuming tasks.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Kyle, for such an incredible thought leadership. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. Our next session will begin at 2:05 Eastern, which will be a panel titled Communication and Collaboration for FP&A Success. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you again, Kyle.
Thanks so much.